that again, in the context of the annual plan, I think this is it's too big an issue for the annual plan, but I do think it's very appropriate for a sort of almost like a scoping exercise of facilities across the city. I think with the focus on the CBD, and this was one of the submissions that came up many times over, was with the focus on the CBD rebuild, that there is a sense that we haven't got our head around the community needs, and those needs are, we've got pressure points both ways. There's pressure points out in the areas where there's been significant damage and community facilities need to be replaced, and there's also pressure points where there's been increased growth in population and we haven't delivered the community facilities that people need. So I'm going to recommend that with all of these community facilities ones, that we go through a prioritisation exercise involving ourselves and also the community board, so that we actually get a handle on what needs to be done, when, how and why. And I think that's going to be an extremely important next piece of work for us as a council. So thank you for that. And the next one, the Legacy Project in New Brighton, and I'm just going to say exactly the same thing for that as well, because I know both David Easting and Glenn Livingston both had that one down. So again, over to a separate process where we will work with the community boards to establish what those community priorities are over the next wee while. But we'll be doing that sooner. We're not deferring it to the long-term plan, but it will be an essential part of the long-term plan for the next financial year and beyond, the immediately following one. Jani Johansson, your one's the Metro Sports Facility defer funding. Now, we were just getting some advice on that, and we may need to wait for further advice on it. Have you got that, Peter?
I'd prefer to leave that to have further clarity from Councillor Johansson later on, more specificity around the question. Okay.
Do you want to formulate a question now for Peter?
Well, I've been given the sheet that updates it for the final 2014-15 annual plan, and actually we've gone from spending next year $217 million down to $86 million. The thing that I'm still unclear about is for this year ending at the end of June, we're supposed to have spent $151 million on Central City projects, and we're still showing that that's what we're doing in terms of the total. So it's a little bit unclear, but I think it would be good to have something that we can attach to the annual plan to show where the money in terms of deferrals of our Central City projects with the new SERA timetables is. With the Metro Sports Facility, for example, I can't understand why we'd be spending money in the next 2 years when actually it's not going to be complete until the end of 2017.
So
I
this
still
is
have some
the
questions
14.
around that.
The new figures are what's going to be attached to the annual plan.
But the new figures still don't reflect the SERA timetable for this, which is their lead project. They're not going to finish it until the end of 2017, and we currently only have 30 million in that year with the amended table. So I do want to understand why we're paying more money in next year and the following year when there's actually it still could be moved out by 2 years in my view.
Okay, well.
So there were a lot of questions there. Do you want me to respond now, or?
No, I think tomorrow would be fine.
We can do it tomorrow or now.
Well, some of the quick items are from the table you've got there, sir. You'll notice that the arrows expressing the carry forwards from 13-14 to 14-15, they make quite a large difference, and they haven't been carried down to the total at the bottom. We have matched to the major facilities. My learned colleague who's not here beside me has indicated that we're not actually able to produce a multi-year plan to place within the annual plan, because that would make it by default a long-term plan, which we're not here to actually do at this point. We're only here to talk about the annual plan. But the implications of this for the budget are very slim by the carry forward of the expenditure and the matching of insurance receipts to those expenditure, or the lack of insurance receipts. The net cost to council is virtually non-existent, particularly because we fund through borrowing for those activities, and we fund the interest costs through that as well to keep it separate and ring-fenced within earthquake. So that's probably a short summary, and I can talk to it more tomorrow or later.
So at this stage, this remains as an amendment. And then the next one is the Linwood Woolston Aquatic Facility, but I'd like to treat that in the same way as I have
Yeah, that's fine.
the others. Yep.
Just
Okay.
the idea behind that amendment was if we saved the interest by deferring the Metro Sports funding for 2 years, in line with what Sarah was proposing, we could spend that interest on actually doing another local aquatic facility. But we can have that wider conversation through the aquatic facilities review.
Excellent.
The next one is around defer the permanent stadium decision and associated funding for 5 years to 2019 and 20. That is actually, if you look at the submissions we received, a large number of people who commented on the stadium said that we should actually do that. We should defer it. It should be the lowest priority. And I think it would be really good to do that. There is a dilemma here because what we've asked people to comment on in terms of our expenditure, the most amount of money we're spending is through the cost share, which was a secret arrangement with government that was never publicly consulted on. And it's really unclear to me at what stage do we consult with our community over what amount of money and what timing and priority we have in terms of those cost share projects. A number of submitters have taken the annual plan process to do that. And I think it's important that we try and reflect on what we've heard and actually make a decision like this. I think it's really important.
I think we can make a reference to the issue and certainly expect it to come up in debate tomorrow. But it's not an amendment that we can accept for the annual plan because it is not it's not a decision that's affected by the annual plan. So it has no impact on the annual plan. So
That can't be right.
Yeah, well, it is right, and I'm afraid that's.
If that's the case, can I just ask, how can we put money on budget for any of the anchor projects that go up past the 3rd year?
Well, it's not in the annual plan. I mean, the annual plan is just an amendment to the 3-year plan. We're not amending the 3-year plan other than for the 2014-15 year, and it's not impacted in terms of the stadium decision. And yes, a number of our residents came to us and said, why are you proceeding with that? Why not defer it for a very long time so that we don't have to pick up those costs?
So maybe actually the amendment needs to be that the council request the minister to defer a permanent stadium decision for 5 years.
No, because it isn't an amendment to the annual plan. And at some stage, we need to have a good conversation about the impact of the cost-sharing agreement on all of our arrangements going forward. That is the long-term plan process, and that is what we will commence next month. So we're not waiting until February next year when we go out to consult on our long-term plan. We will begin a very open and public process next month. And that, to me, is the ideal opportunity to start reflecting honestly, which is why we got the Quarter Mentha report after all, reflecting honestly on why we are in the financial position that we are in. So I fully understand where you're coming from. You are certainly reflecting exactly what people said when they came to make their submissions, but it is not an amendment to the annual plan, I'm sorry.
There's a number of things in here that are not just financial amendments. They're amendments to do more work, to investigate, to request. So I can't see why we couldn't signal clearly that this is something we wish to consider.
No, well, I've referred things off to different processes, and I'm referring this one off to the long-term plan process.
But
so,
that's not going to be the process that does that.
Well, yeah. Okay. It will be part of that. It will be part of that process, but you're right. It's not the only process that will be
because
entering
the
into.
minister's already made comments in the public realm.
Point of order. This is not. It's got nothing to do with the annual plan process.
Yeah, the thing is that I've taken that as far as I can. Thank you. So the next one is an urgent report on the alignment of skirt works and accessible transport plan. Again, I don't think that. I mean. I totally understand where you're coming from, but I don't think that it's an amendment to the annual plan. I think we're using the annual plan process to raise an issue, And I don't know that it came up in the submissions.
It did. It came through the Hagley Ferrymead Community Board, who have raised repeated concerns that we're spending money that we don't have because Skirt are doing repairs. We've got suburban master plans and accessible transport plans, which mean we're spending money 3 times on the same piece of road to get the outcome that we want as a city. This is totally related to, is very much related to our annual plan. This is about our expenditure. This is about opportunities to save and rationalise our spending on infrastructure repairs so that we do it once and we do it properly and we do it with a better outcome than we might otherwise get. If you look at the Transport Plan Phase 1, there is 13.5 million that we are spending, and probably even actually 27 million that we are spending. So this is money, this is real money that we are spending as a council ahead of or after Skirt have done the repairs. So I personally don't believe, and this was, this is something that has repeatedly been raised, that we need to urgently get on top of because we cannot afford to do things 3 times on the same piece of road. So it's really, really urgent.
So I probably need to take some advice on whether it's an appropriate amendment to the annual plan. That I'm not 100% sure of.
Well, if we had the information about how we can do that, I would happily move that. And what I've asked for is a list of programs that we've got in our renewals program, a list of the Skirt work, and a list of the master plan and accessible transport plan, so that we can actually align the projects into one project rather than having 3 or 4 different ones. But I need staff to provide us with that information, which is why I've called for a report rather than try and make these amendments today. If I was making these amendments today, I'd be talking about things like Kilmore Street, the 2-waying of Kilmore Street, for example. But we're not in a position because we don't have that information to do that.
All right. Well, we'll deal with that one overnight, perhaps, and work out what the most appropriate course of action is tomorrow.
I'm happy to withdraw the next one, and also there's one further down around the Heathcote, Redcliffe, Wilson, St Martin's community facilities. I think we can deal with that through the facilities rebuild process, probably on Thursday.
The library opening hours. What's the impact of that?
Our initial assessment of that would be around 94,000, or just under 0.03% impact on rates.
Okay, well that's an acceptable amendment, so you can move that tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Yep. And the next one is it's a vote against the recommendation that I've put forward, so that's acceptable as well.
Okay.
The Avon River.
Again, we're spending money. We're spending money next year on the Avon River Park. I don't believe that it will be complete by the end of next year, and so I think we could save money on that.
Is that capital, Peter, or is that?
I believe it is. It looks from the initial glance that's currently in the 13-14 year. So deferring it out to 15-16 would have no effect on next year's annual plan.
Right.
But actually, the Avon River Park isn't scheduled for completion until the 4th quarter 2015. So I don't know why we're showing that we're going to spend that money this year or next year.
But it was in the budget for this year.
Yeah.
It hasn't been spent.
Yeah.
So presumably it would carry forward into next year or not?
If it passed the carry forward test of being expected to be spent next year, that would be the general scheme.
But if
there's no impact from pushing it out a year to 15-16.
So I mean, yeah. All right. So that's.
The staff will just do that. We need an amendment.
I think that. Well, I don't know. I mean, the question is how does it get carried forward, Peter? I mean, is there a carry forward motion?
There's a carry forward process to ensure that projects are committed and that carry forward is appropriate. What I'd suggest on this one is that overnight we can look at whether that would be, in the absence of this information, an appropriate carry forward or not.
Right.
And I think the other piece of information we need on this one is when are the operational costs coming to us? because we currently have 3% coming in 15-16, but actually some of this work is happening in stages, and that will have an impact on us.
Yeah, okay, so that's a question of when does the Crown refer the asset to us, and are they doing it piece by piece? Because I understand they're not at this stage. I mean, we haven't been given back the land between the Antigua boat sheds and the Montreal.
Okay.
I don't believe we have. That's what we need to check, so thank you. And the other three have been withdrawn, so they're all the.
Madam Mayor, there is one late error that we discovered.
Yes, yeah, please.
Which we've passed to Councillor East, if he'd be so kind.
Thank you. Just been advised that in the draft fee schedule there was an omission of a $250 commercial pre-application fee. It was left out of the draft.
So you'll be moving that tomorrow?
I'll be moving that tomorrow.
That's great.
Was it left out there, councillor? Was it left out there, councillor?
No, unfortunately, I don't believe so. It should have been included in the errors section this morning, but we missed it.
So I think that's all of the. I don't know if anyone had any last-minute questions before we adjourn for tomorrow. Yep, Yanni.
I'd really like just to get some information back. I assume this could be dealt with at a staff level without the need for a formal amendment, but we did have a submission from the Burnside Rugby Club over the fees and charges for organised sport activity. It seemed a relatively minor thing, but if we need a formal amendment, I'm happy to move one. I was hoping that staff could, just go away and work that through. So can I just flag that as something possibly to be raised tomorrow?
Well, if we could get some information on that overnight.
Thank you.
It was one of the submissions that came in from was it the Burnside Rugby Club?
Councillor Johansson, can you give me a reference number or volume number?
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll adjourn the meeting. Sorry, not adjourn the meeting. I'll close the meeting. But wait, before I do, I'll look at what time. So we'll start again at 9:30 tomorrow morning. That's the scheduled time. So and we should be in a position to formally move the adoption motion and move the amendments that we have accepted and receive some additional information and then proceed to the debate and then the vote on the annual plan. So thank you all very much, and thank you to the staff too. Peter, if you could please pass that on to the whole team that sits behind you for all of the support that we've had. Thank you very much. Right, we'll see you tomorrow.